Kelly Gardner.
Hello.
Hello. We are back with another very spontaneous episode.
We are.
On the podcast because obviously you were our 6th guest.
Mm-hmm.
I think we released it as the 5th episode, but you were the 6th. And you were just so open and honest and vulnerable in that conversation. And I loved it. And I also had a lot of people saying that they really, really appreciated how honest you were as well.
Oh, that's so lovely.
Which was so nice.
Yeah.
And yeah, you kind of took us through in that episode your journey thus far, kind of focusing on, I guess, your move to London a few years back now, and then again your move back to New Zealand in this kind of new chapter of your life, and the kind of identity shifts and the inner work that you've been doing and the growth that has happened. And yeah, I just absolutely loved the conversation, and obviously we are great friends.
We are.
And a couple weeks ago we were just having a coffee catch up, and you were talking to me all about some recent changes that have happened and some decisions that you have made. And as always, you were very articulate and eloquent about how you were feeling and what was coming up. And I sort of said to you that I'm forgetting that we're actually being recorded on video as well. And I said to you that I thought it'd be really good to just jump back on and do a sort of really casual, relaxed episode and have a chat about how you are feeling right now with your upcoming move to Sydney.
Yes.
So here we are.
Here we are trying to regurgitate the entire conversation that we had in the cafe.
Yeah. Well, look, we also, as you can tell, hopefully this works. Like, we'll see. This is our first kind of like very casual episode on Između. We do not have the privilege of having Jack Bouvier here to deal with all the technical stuff. So, look, we're just two girls. We have been messing around for like 2.5 hours now.
A wee while, but we're here.
I sincerely hope that these mics are working and on, but anyway.
I'm fingers crossed I'm not pushing any buttons that change everything that we've just set up.
Yes. So, yeah, Kels, I reckon we just have a good old yarn, as the Kiwis would say, about I guess with your episode last year. So that we shot that in October.
Really? In October? I think we shot that maybe November?
I think it was just when I came back from my trip in October.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Maybe it was
yeah.
then. Yeah, because I started putting myself out there
Yeah.
online, I believe, in October.
Yes.
And then it was very close after doing that you're right, we did film the potty.
Yeah.
I don't know why I thought it was November, December, but that's wild.
I know. And like, even when you say that now, this is just so cool to me because so Kelly and I are going through very similar things, I would say, in life on a broad scale in terms of like our moves, and
I feel like we're on a similar path,
but very different journeys. But if you were to look at it on paper, you'd be like, oh yeah, that's fairly similar. They've both left their previous careers that were more corporate focused. They both moved countries. They're both blah. But it's funny when you say there, like, you know, that you started putting yourself out there, because we had one conversation, I don't know when this would have been, but sometime like a year ago, when I said to you, like, you would be incredible just online. Like, you've got such a presence and you're just so funny. And there was so much fear coming up for you then too.
Oh, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
Right, which makes sense. But I guess, can we just quickly touch on that? Because to look at you now and to look at the work that you've done and like you've been so vulnerable on your socials, it's just really cool to look back and remember that conversation and be like, wow, like you really worked through all of that fear.
Thanks. It's when you say that, I feel like I've worked through parts of it, and it's a constant working through that fear. I don't like saying it never. It gets easier, but it doesn't go away. It's something you like constantly work at and get better at. But from when I first started to now, I feel like I'm so much more comfortable sharing online. And that's not to say that there's still parts where I don't want to share and what gets shared. It's more not holding myself back as much and still just working through all that. So a lot of the fear was actually just doing it and wanting it to be so perfect and having this vision of like, it needs to look like this before it goes out, or I need people to see me in this way, and just letting go of that perfectionism, which is something I have to work through all the time. And it's always there. It's just recognizing it's there and then still choosing to do the thing I know I really want to do.
Yeah. With so like say when you posted your first thing online, I actually remember it. You were walking on the beach, weren't you? And it was like a video and it was like, I'm finally doing this. It was something like that.
Yes, I remember the story. I feel like that was the Instagram story that I put. I can't remember the exact in-feed post. I'd probably have to scroll back further. Yeah.
What do you think it was that was, if there was anything in particular like that really was the catalyst to you just being like, I've got to do this, and like I also feel like I'm ready to do this?
It was more of I'm stopping myself from doing something I really want to do, and I just need to do the thing. Otherwise, I'm going to be in the exact same spot in a few months, or I don't want to be in the exact same spot if I don't start now, if that makes sense. I'm trying to put it eloquently, but it's like...
It was like something needed to change. Like something needed to happen for you to get to the point that you wanted to get to. And I know that sounds really obvious and simple, but I think about this a lot when I want to make changes in my life. A lot of us think through it all, and we might think differently, like, oh, I want to do this and I want to do that, and we're thinking through it all. But if nothing actually happens in your day-to-day life where you're making like changes and nothing, it's like the whole thing of like insanity is doing the same thing and expecting the same result. Does that resonate? It was kind of like, I need to actually do something that's gonna shift.
My position, I think, was more, I don't want to be in this spot this time next year. I don't want to have this same month, this same day next year and still not have posted content. That would be the biggest, I guess, disappointment. So to be honest, I can't actually remember, because it feels like so long ago and it feels like so much has happened, to then take me back to that time and what specifically ignited it. It was more, I don't want to be in this same spot, having wasted a year, wishing that I'd started over a year ago. I just need to start now. And it took a while to even get to that point to then warrant me, okay, I'm going to take action now. It was more working through perfectionism, fear of being seen, fear of what are people going to think about this? What if it doesn't perform and then it flops? But being okay with that, because if that's the intention I'm going into it with, is that really the right intention for me? So it's like working through all that, but just doing it anyway. Not having to have all that work through of all this internal stuff, having to be in a certain place before I can then start posting content. It was just, I've just got to do it and then just see what happens.
I love that.
So,
I do. I love that so much because...
So yeah, it's like there is this internal work that needs to be done, but the internal work doesn't need to be done to a certain point in order for you to be able to move forward with whatever it is that you want to do. You know, it helped me and it got me to a specific place where I was like, okay, now I can take action. But of course, there's always going to be more work to do. I just had to bite the bullet and do something I really wanted to for a long time. And who knows, maybe I would have shared the post and did it and thought, actually, this isn't for me. But at least I tried. And a few months later now, 6-7 months later, I'm still going with it. So
it's so good.
So, you know, and whether I'll still be sticking with it in a year or a few months, who knows? But right now my intention is to just keep doing that and keep building what it is that I want to build.
Absolutely. And I think I'm genuinely so proud of you because the consistency, because the consistency part of it is often like one of the hardest things, right?
Yeah.
Whatever that may look like, you know, for you it was showing up on your socials and being authentic and sharing your journey, and that might be very different for someone else. But I think that is like the secret sauce, what you were talking about in terms of like really making a decision and then just figuring everything out later. And in many ways you've kind of adopted that same approach with your move now.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so Kelly and I have really interesting chats in this way because I am very naturally type B, but sometimes to my detriment. And you're very naturally type A, and sometimes to your detriment. And, you know, there's very much pros and cons to all of that.
Of course.
But, you know, well, you can correct me if you think that this is not accurate, but I think in your ideal world, you know, your move to Sydney, you would have absolutely every single thing planned out. But you've recognised that that's also not always possible, and you've worked through that sort of thing in the sense of there's a lot of beauty that can come from actually not having a plan. Would you agree with that or disagree?
I feel like I'm a lot more flexible to being open to whatever Sydney is going to be. Mm-hmm. In an ideal world, I wouldn't necessarily want I wouldn't want to know everything and how it's all going to happen. Some days there are days where I want to know the how, and that's where we all get caught up on how are things going to work out? How's this going to happen? How am I going to get to this? But actually like trusting the flow and having that trust in yourself that no matter like what happens, you'll be able to handle it. That's what I'm going into Sydney with. And there are things that I would like to have secured before the move to Sydney 100%, mainly a job that can help support me both coach and also support a lifestyle over there, because in an ideal world I'd be coaching full time, and that'll come through when it's meant to come through. But with Sydney at this point in my life, it's just being able to actually embody what it is that I preach. And a lot of it is building self-trust. And what pushed me with Sydney was, okay, are you really about it? You say you want to move to Australia, and you've been saying that for so long, for about a year now.
Right.
Not, you know, it started off as like a small inkling. It's just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And it got to the point where I just found myself waiting for permission to do the thing that I really want to do. You know, in the past it was content, and then in this time round, it's the actual move to Sydney. And so realizing, okay, what is it that's actually holding me back from making the actual jump to Sydney? Because I moved to London with no job, no flat, nothing planned, and that all worked out.
Yeah.
But in Sydney, in Australia, I found myself thinking, I need a job or I need X, Y, and Z before I can actually move to Sydney. And when I look at that, it's like, is that the truth? Am I subscribing to a belief that is expanding me, or is it making me contract in a certain way?
Right.
And I realized that I got to a point where it was actually restricting me and keeping me playing small, if that makes sense. Because small and comfortable would be me living in the mount, staying in the mount, waiting until a job or something comes into my life that then gives me the permission to go and do what it is that I really, really want to do, which is live in Australia or just try Australia in general. And once I had that realization, it's like, okay, Sydney's an opportunity to really see, okay, are you about it? Because you're in a completely different position of when you first moved to London, which was a position of proving that I can do it and that I'm worthy. Because again, post breakup and moving 3 months after that, and coming from a subconscious place, of course, of I need London to look exactly like this so that I can prove I'm good and that prove that I'm like better off. Whereas Sydney is different, having just done a whole pivot in terms of career and internal work and everything that I want from my life and what success actually looks like, having that change drastically.
Right.
Sydney feels different in that sense. And so it just it felt like an opportunity of, okay, are you really about it? Are you really about embodying the thing that you teach people on, which is all about self-trust?
That's huge.
Absolutely huge.
Whoa.
You know? So it's like coaching people through change in their life, whatever that change looks like, and having the trust that you've got everything you need within you, and you're already enough, and no matter what happens, you already have all the power over your internal world. You can only control how you react and what you choose to feel and choose to act on. And so, yeah, Sydney feels like a massive, a massive practice
and
of
practice,
that. Yeah.
So much to unpack there, which
heaps.
is amazing. Which is also, I love Kelly. You're just full of wisdom. On that point about the self-trust, Kels, like, have you already felt a sense of, I guess, like, have you already felt like, you want to pat yourself on the back for making that decision because you've actually moved through with something that you said? I mean, I know you haven't physically moved yet, but I am really interested in the idea that, a lot of self-esteem and self-trust and self-confidence comes from showing up as the person that you know that you can be and that you want to be, and actually the congruence that kind of results in when you're like, I really want to be this higher version, and I want to, say even if it was just like the gym, you're like, I really want to become like someone that's fit and healthy and goes to the gym a lot, and then you do that, and then you're like, oh gosh, there's like a lot of congruence there between. It's like one of the reels I just posted from Courtney's episode, Courtney Durr. She was talking about that. The further away those two images are, the kind of more inclined you are to feel disconnected from yourself. And so, yeah, I just kind of, you haven't moved and you've not started that journey physically yet, but how have you felt just from, like, because you just booked your flights? And I remember the day you did it, and you were just like, I'm going and I'm doing it. Like, How do you feel now in this phase after having kind of, done that?
I feel super excited to start like this new chapter and start like the next level of my life. And in saying that, there's still this fear. Like, there's always going to be fear around what may or may not happen, or just fear in general. But it's feeling that and working through it, as we've talked about before. Feeling it, but not letting it control my decisions. Because as soon as that controls my decisions and the way I move in life, that's when you start playing small. So the way fear controlled me prior to making that decision is, I need all these things lined up first before I can move to Australia. And that's a fear of control in a way, fear of losing control, should I actually say. Fear of not having control over everything outside of me, which we never really have control. That's all an illusion. You can only control what goes on internally. I feel it comes through, self-esteem comes through from just taking action, right? And once you start taking action, that builds momentum and you keep going because you're just moving and feeling things change. And that creates the desire to just keep going with it. So me booking that flight to Sydney was a commitment to actually doing it, because on one hand, I could have just said and told everyone, I'm moving, I'm going to do this, and have nothing physically confirming or cementing my decision further.
Right.
It's going all in on something, because otherwise one foot's in, oh, I'm going to play it safe, and, I haven't got any flights booked yet, so I've still got the safety net here, or the other foot is in, I'm moving to Australia, but I haven't fully made the commitment until I take action.
Right.
So booking that ticket was me committing both to myself and also signaling to the universe, I'm in this.
Right.
Like, I'm in it 100%. And once you actually make that commitment, both to yourself, everything else starts falling into place.
Have you found that since booking the flights?
Yeah, 100%. Finding, I'm lucky, I have family there, so I'm allowed to go stay with them. They are about an hour and a half outside of Sydney, so good enough.
Yeah, right.
I've had a few people who I know reach out in Sydney and say if I need any help, just like message them, which is great. But it's more about the commitment to the actual move. That's really solidified okay, I'm doing this. Right. I'm not just talking about it. I'm not just thinking about it. I'm doing it because my flights are booked. You know, there's no going back. So it's getting rid of all opportunity to make me stay here or have things tie me down and hold me here, that safety net, getting rid of all of that and just committing.
Even just when you're like talking about that, because I guess my mind is kind of going, and I've spoken about this quite a bit on the podcast episodes so far, is like going back to when I was working in London, and I just intuitively felt like there was something else I should be doing. Like, it was an amazing job and in many ways an amazing firm that I was working in, and I loved the people and all these things, but I just really always wanted to move to somewhere in Oceania, like do something different. And I had so many months of that feeling of like, oh, I really want to just quit and do it. But it can get really confusing. And there's a lot, again, as you say, like there's a lot of fear that can come with that. And for many of those months, it was this idea of like, I need to sort absolutely everything before I can quit my job. And then it was just one day that I'd come off a FaceTime with my brother and his partner, and it just completely flipped. It was like, oh, no, actually I need to quit my job and then figure everything else out, albeit I did have a long notice period. But the sense of like freedom and energy that came from that, because it was just, once I actually put my resignation in, it was like something to show for like, okay, we're moving, we're doing something, we're doing it. Like, it's that whole thing of what you said, like, what did you say? Like, you're all about it. Or is that,
yeah, it's proving to yourself, okay, are you about it?
Are you about it?
For me, it was, are you actually about it? You know, you talk about a lot of the self-trust, you talk about change, you talk about fear, you talk about a whole lot of things. Are you really about it? How are you doing that more in your life? And so that's what Sydney was. And adding on to what you were saying is that it's also about creating space to bring in the thing that you really want. Because if there's some sort of change that you want in life, whatever that may look like, it's not in your life for a reason, because everything that you have been doing, thinking, doing, believing, feeling up until this point is basically gotten to you where you are now, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And so if you're constantly doing those things, hoping for something different to come through, there's no space for that to come through in your life.
Yeah.
So until something in your current reality, whether that's changing the way you think, changing the way you feel, changing the way you act, that simple interruption of, you know, the usual known is then creating a whole disrupt in your reality and creating space for something that you then want to come through, you know. So for me, with Sydney, very comfortable life here in the Mount. Gorgeous, love it, amazing. I'm so lucky. But if I keep going with this, there's no room in my life right now to bring about a life in Sydney until I make some sort of change. And so that change is buying that ticket,
right?
Quitting the job that I have at the moment that helps me balance coaching, you know?
Yeah.
It's shedding certain things in my current reality, in my current life, that make space for the type of, I guess let's call them manifestations, that I'm trying to bring in. So perhaps in your case, you know, it is that quitting of the job, the lawyer career in London, to make space,
right,
for you to actually grow beyond that and bring in the type of life that you're wanting to create, which you've brought to fruition, because look at where we are right now.
Right. I have a question on that. So how, from your point of view, how do you discern whether or not those external changes and those decisions are actually the necessary thing that you have to do to bring certain things to fruition, versus when you're actually just grasping onto that sort of thing to, I guess, like avoid something that you need to sit with internally or work that you need to do within yourself? I'll use an example of, like, I absolutely love my life here in New Zealand. As you say, it is just, we live in like a little paradise. It's amazing. There's been a few points since moving here a year and a half ago of me, it's kind of like this grass is always greener thing sometimes, of like, oh, my time in the mount's done. I've gotten everything out of it that I need to get out. I'm moving on to something else. Maybe like somewhere in Australia or whatever. Or something totally different. Like sometimes it was like Japan or something. I'm just going to go to Japan. I don't know, random, right? And there's been various times where I've like nailed my colours to the mast, and I sort of, when my brother was here, I was like, oh, nah, I'm going to move. It's done. You know? And really, actually, when I sat with that a bit more and also talked to friends and things and worked through it, it was like, that was me just, yes, thinking the grass is greener, like that was going to solve all of my problems that I was going through here. And so my question to you is like, I know that you obviously sat with this decision for a while, and you are someone that is very in tune with your intuition. And I know that you have made the right decision in that way, and you know that too. But I guess, do you have any advice on like how to discern when you're actually just using those sort of decisions to run away from certain things?
Well, yeah, it's sitting with the idea of the decision I'm making does this feel like it's a decision out of fear, or is this a true decision out of excitement? We have to sit with that decision and determine, is this coming from a fear state, or is it coming from pure excitement and expansiveness? Do I feel like I'm being expanded and stretched in the way that feels super exciting in making this decision or choosing this type of change? Or do I feel like I'm coming at this change out of fear because if I don't do this, XYZ is going to happen?
Okay.
So figuring out that internally and sitting with that yourself. And sometimes the answer to that comes directly to us, sometimes it doesn't. And it's more being okay with that and not having to have everything fully figured out in order to take just the next step.
Yeah.
And sometimes the next step isn't clear. It's murky, it's the trenches, it's challenging. But a step is better than just staying stagnant.
Yes.
So having the courage just to take that step towards whatever change it is that you're making is a whole lot better than staying stagnant and being in the exact same spot that you are this time next year. And so maybe you take that next step, and maybe you realize that the intention you took that step with wasn't of your highest intentions. It was fear-based or whatnot. But at least you know, and you had to go through that in order to figure that out. You need to take that step to be able to distinguish what a fear-based decision is for you versus a expanded and excited decision in your life, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Sometimes things won't go how you planned them or wanted them to go, or sometimes you don't come out of a certain situation or experience feeling amazing. Like, that's just life, but like at least you can take things from it and know, like, well, I never would have known this thing, as much as it's uncomfortable and I have to like sit in maybe like uncomfortable feelings from those learnings. I never would have known that if I hadn't gone through that thing.
Yep. And that's the gift.
And that's the gift. And when you start to see life that way, it does give you this sense of expansion, because you do realize that it is kind of like, you have to fuck around a bit to find out. It's again, it's so simple, but it's like that emphasis that you put on that word of stagnation. I think I've thought about stagnation a lot in the past year, because I personally feel stagnation physically in my body when I feel quite stagnant, or there's decisions that I need to make that I've not made and I know it and I'm thinking about it a lot and I've not done anything about it. And there's absolutely, I have no idea if there's any medical science behind this whatsoever, but I do feel like that for me manifested in me having like restless legs at the start of this year. There was like so much like nervous energy, stagnant energy in my body.
Yeah.
It was, and I just think like, I don't know, it just almost felt like it was my body's way of being like, you got to move some of this, like make some decision. And I did, and I did go away. Again, absolutely no medical foundation to that whatsoever. But yeah, this idea of like stagnation, like keep moving. Like even if it's not going to be the perfect step right in front of you and it's not going to be completely clear, like moving through it is one of the only ways.
And that's the thing, it's not so much about physical movement as well. Sometimes it's internal movement. We don't often have to be so physically doing something that's physically changing everything in our lives.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's internal movement as well. And what I mean by internal movement is processing things that are going on inside our bodies. So what we are feeling physically about ourselves, and going further into that, it's about our emotions, because our emotions get stored in our bodies, right? And our emotions are generated by the thoughts that we have. So we have a thought in our mind, whether we're conscious or unconscious of that thought, and that creates an emotion in our body.
Right.
And whether we choose to let ourselves feel that emotion or try and avoid it and push it down, the more we push that down, the deeper it gets stored in our body. So the more we avoid it, the more it's just going to get stored in the body, and it comes through in ways that we don't expect it. It can come through in more overthinking or more self-criticism or actual physical symptoms of whatever that may be, you know, because as you know, the body always keeps the score. And so what we don't process internally through our emotions and what the body is feeling, it makes it so hard to move through in life and have that congruence between our mind and our body, because they're not meant to work against each other, you know. It comes from making any change in our lives. Consciously, we know what we need to do in order to make the change that we want. But if we're having these subconscious thoughts that are telling ourselves, you're not good enough, or you can't do this because X, Y, Z, that creates a feeling in the body, and the body feels unsafe. And so if the body doesn't feel safe, you're not going to do the thing that you know you need to do.
Right.
Because it's uncomfortable, or there's something in here that hasn't been processed in order for you to actually make the change and take the action on what it is that you want.
Where do you feel fear in your body?
Depends on what the kind of fear is. Sometimes it's in the stomach, sometimes it's in the chest, sometimes it's in the shoulders. It can show up anywhere in different parts of people's bodies, because not everyone's bodies operate in the same way, right? So
yeah,
and sometimes it creeps up on you. Sometimes you don't realize that your shoulders are starting to tense when you're, you know, when you're feeling a certain way. And perhaps that's because your body and your nervous system in particular has become accustomed to operating under such chronic stress, or whatever it may be.
It's so interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
I get like it normally shows up in my chest. Like I'll get such a tight chest.
Yeah.
And if I like turn that way, I can go like crack all right. But that's the energy being released.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And when we were at coffee a couple of weeks ago, what you were talking about was really, really fascinating to me about how, because you've obviously qualified as a holistic mind-body practitioner. And you really do know your stuff. And you were talking to me about how there has been a lot of fear about your move to Sydney, but you've been so cognizant of it. And maybe just you touch on that, because you were essentially saying like you were so aware of the fear that you were feeling, but it was almost like because of your awareness, you were then like overthinking it and trying maybe like not to feel it or move through it in a way, like rather than just feeling it and acknowledging that it was there. How have you found that your knowledge now of how the mind and body connect, and your knowledge of emotions and processing them and working through them, how do you find that has interacted with just your day-to-day, like...
Well, giving more context to what we were talking about in our little coffee catch-up.
Yeah.
I knew that there was fear around the move to Sydney, because fear is inevitable. Fear will always come up and pop up in many ways, especially when it comes to change. And so, of course, there's fear around the move to Sydney, but it's not letting that fear control me, which, you know, is often easier said than done.
Right.
But that comes from being able to sit with that fear. And so what we were talking about was a whole lot of, I can sense that the fear is there, I can feel it, but I was trying not to feel it in more fear that acknowledging it and seeing it would lead me to then manifest it more.
Right.
And manifest more of the outcome that I am fearing may or may not happen. And so that is avoidance. of that fear as well. So it's avoiding fear entirely. And so
right,
I am trying, and so in that point in time, it was more, I've just got to think positively and think the best, and then it's going to all just work out. But positive thinking doesn't override any emotion whatsoever. It'll always get stored in the body. So you can't override a nervous system that feels unsafe with positive thinking. Yeah. It's just not going to work. Mindset work alone does not work until the body and your nervous system also feels safe.
Right.
So the incongruency between my thoughts and the way my body was feeling was huge. So what I had to do was actually sit with that fear and recognize that it's there and feel into it and let it tell me what it's trying to tell me, because there's fear there for a reason. It comes from whatever core wound people are working through. So it's like, what is this fear? That fear is coming from some sort of core wound, and I can let that fear drive me, or I can choose to believe something else. And so it's being able to sit with that fear and be okay with it, but not let it drive all your decisions. So avoiding that is just going to make it worse, and it's going to make it expand in ways that I would not be aware of completely. That makes sense. So it's being able to sit with it, recognize it, work through it, and work with it. So it's not like denying it, it's seeing it, feeling it, but then choosing to believe something else or take action in general,
rather than trying to just avoid it altogether. So would that kind of look like for you, say like a fearful thought was coming up, would you try and almost like sanitize it and neutralize it in your mind? Like what was happening there when you say that you're kind of like, you didn't want to operate from, I guess, then feeling that fear and what you said, like sort of then magnetizing the same sort of energy towards you? Like what were you doing to try and get rid of it then at that time? Was it just like your brain was like almost telling yourself like, don't think like that? Like,
well, that's the thing. If we're constantly living our lives from up here instead of in here and feeling our body, we are in survival mode if we're constantly just trying to overthink and like logically understand things and think this way and think that way. It's also about the feeling. So when I say I work through it, it's like, okay, feeling that fear. Yeah, it's scary. It's scary to move to the other side of the world and have no backup plan or have full uncertainty. It's scary, 100%. Do I want to let that feeling of it being scary or that fear of however it may work out, do I want to let that drive my decisions and keep me safe by, okay, I'm not going to feel that fear. I'm just going to stay here where it's safe and continue as things have always been. Or am I going to feel it and still choose to move forward? So it's processing that feeling of fear, because we do feel it. We feel it in our chest, in our shoulders, in our stomach, wherever it is. But it's not letting us, it's choosing to not let it run us.
Yeah.
Not letting it run us subconsciously.
Yeah.
Or consciously. Because sometimes we can feel that fear, but then just avoid it and ignore it.
Yeah.
And just choose to think positively, because that's going to bring the best outcome.
Right.
But it's also about feeling it and then choosing to step into that unknown.
Right. Which you've done.
I'm about to do, yeah. We're in the process of doing.
So I know we'll need to wrap up shortly. Let's just kind of, I guess, then talk about your move coming up then. So you're moving on.
I love how you talk. Let's talk about your move. Like we haven't been talking about that
the whole time. But your physical move.
Yes.
Like when, like you're leaving in July. You have been applying for jobs, and obviously you're going to live with your family. And I guess, like, are you now at the point where you're just kind of like more excited, or are you still scared?
I am still excited. It's both.
Yeah, both.
I'm excited. There's moments where I feel scared, because change is scary in general. So you can't deny it. It's not okay. I've seen it. I've felt it. It's not going to ever come back up. It keeps coming back up, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But it's just being comfortable with the fact that it's going to pop up.
Yeah.
Fear, feeling scared, it's always going to pop up in our lives no matter what, especially with change, because we are always leaving the known, which the brain perceives as safe.
Yeah.
So the brain always loves routine, it loves patterns, it loves predictability, and that is the known, and that feels safe. Once we decide to then choose the unknown, which is a whole completely something we've never experienced in our lives before, to the brain, that is scary because it can't predict what's going to happen. There is no pattern. We're stepping into the unknown. So as soon as we make a choice of changing something in our lives, we enter like this initiation into the unknown, and that's where like our biggest opportunity for growth is.
Yeah.
And that's something we have to choose daily, whether that is physically, mentally, emotionally. It's all intertwined.
It is.
You know, so when you ask me, it's a mix of both.
Yeah.
And it's just being comfortable with the fact that I'm not going to have everything planned out. I'm not going to have all the answers. And that's okay, because we're not meant to know the how of every little detail in our lives.
Yeah.
You know?
No.
Yeah.
I agree.
And that is very challenging to remember and embody when we're going through so much, let's say, what people might call turmoil or uncertainty.
Well, especially just given, I guess, the state of the world for the last, 5-6 years. It has, on a very, large scale, just felt like it's been a bit chaotic. And there's been so many, changes that have come in to do with, AI and social media and all these things that it's rapidly changing. And I think a lot of us are feeling the effects of that just on an individual level, just broadly in terms of oh my gosh, everything kind of feels a bit out of control, since kind of COVID. And I know what you mean. There is this sort of I guess I kind of see it a lot, just a lot of kind of, I guess, scrambling for that sense of control, but then you kind of don't have as much space, as you were talking about, to let other things in when everything's overly planned and you're not allowing any sort of sense of kind of, oh, well, if I leave a little bit of space here, then maybe something amazing will happen that I didn't even predict or plan. And, I think we've spoken about this before. I do the exact opposite, or I almost don't like to plan because I just like everything to flow, and I am quite sort of on the day with things and we'll just figure it out. But a friend pointed out to me that that's actually just another form of extreme control, just in a very different way. And so I think that's where I'm, when I say that we're quite different in terms of us being type A and type B, are they that different actually when you look at it?
Well, that's the thing. I don't think we're fully one thing.
Yeah.
There are probably parts of you that are type A in one area of your life, or a certain part of you that's type A about something. A certain part of you that's type B. We're not fully one thing.
Binary.
We're completely multidimensional. So where there's some parts of my life that I am type A, and then there's other parts where I am type B. It's not a complete duality
you are this way,
between
yeah.
the two. Perhaps it's a mix, and perhaps people like labels, perhaps they don't.
Yeah.
But I think it's a mix of both.
I agree. What would you say, since us recording last October and we're now in May?
Wow.
End of May, almost
Crazy.
June. What are some little nuggets of wisdom, if you have any to share, that you've kind of taken from this huge period of change and growth for you since that time? There's been a lot of chapters, I think, for you in the last few years, from what I know of you and the story that you shared in the episode. But just in terms of marking between that episode and now, are there any learnings that you'd like to share?
Don't be afraid of change. Change is the best thing to happen to us. Change is very hard. And sometimes it's often not the change we expect, but it's always the change that we need. And it's also learning that we're never going to be able to control everything that goes on outside of us. Things will happen. Things that we don't expect will change. I'm saying change a lot. But like, we can't control everything that goes on outside of us. We can only control what goes on internally. So we can only control how we choose to feel and how we choose to react. That's all we can do. And everything that's happening outside of us is simply a reflection of the world going on within. And it's being able to sit with that and recognize, okay, I've brought this, everything that's going on in my external reality, I've brought this into my world simply by how everything that's going on internally.
Right.
You know? So it's simply a reflection of what's going on within.
Just because you were talking earlier about the nervous system, like the power of that, oh my goodness me, because I think it took quite a long time for my nervous system to stabilize when I first came out here. And it's almost like I'm going through the world just like in an entirely different, I know it's not the comfiest, is it? It's almost like I'm going through the world in like a different, well, it kind of feels like it, in like almost like a different body. My lens of how I'm interpreting things has changed. The way I feel my body, it is crazy. And I think that is just because my nervous system is like calmed down a lot. And then, you know, so many things that happen or so many situations, you just interpret them so differently because you're coming at them from a place of that, I guess, like, yeah, feeling calm, feeling safe. And I think that's obviously why different modalities like breath work or like meditation are so useful, because they really do help to bring your body and your nervous system back to like that kind of like calm state.
That homeostasis, 100%. And it's not about being in homeostasis all the time. And by homeostasis, I mean that level of we feel calm, we feel relaxed. It's great to feel relaxed. And at the same time, we do need that type of stress that comes with change in general.
Sure.
Because if we're constantly feeling safe all the time and comfortable and our nervous system is regulated 100% of the time, we're not growing.
Yeah.
Nothing in our life is changing.
Stagnation.
That is stagnation, yes. Because once we choose to change something, that means we're growing.
Right.
It also means that because we're changing and it's completely unknown to both our brains and our nervous system, of course that's going to push us into that fight or flight mode, and we're going to feel that stress. But it's not about staying in that constantly stressed state. It's also having that moment to bring us back to homeostasis. So life is always going to serve us certain challenges and lessons where we're constantly going through life like this. And that's going to impact our nervous system of feeling fight and flight, and then back into rest and digest, and fight and flight. It's not about constantly being in that level of safety of always regulated. It's riding that wave of change and having our nervous system dip into rest and digest, and then spike up into fight or flight, and that's called nervous system toning.
Right.
Because the more stress we face, we're toning our system for a new capacity, if that makes sense. A new normal. So the level of stress your nervous system can kind of deal with right now, if you're wanting to, I don't know, let's say make more money, can your nervous system actually feel safe with whatever amount of money you're trying to call in? Because if it doesn't feel safe, it's going to be constantly in this fight or flight energy of how do I hold it? How do I keep it? How do I make more? Oh God.
Right.
So it's being able to work with your nervous system to work through the waves and regulate yourself, because we all need that nervous system toning, because that's how we grow. I feel like I've really just gone off so many
No, you
tangents
haven't.
there.
That's so relevant.
You know, so it's
so relevant to what we were talking about in terms of like, you don't want to confuse being calm and being relaxed and being comfortable with stagnation. And I think I heard this, I can't remember where, but it was really, I think for me, on the money about, in many ways, a lot of us in the Western world, at least, even though everyone goes through their own struggles and their own obstacles, like a lot of us are used to like extreme comfort if we compare ourselves to like humans living on this planet like 400 years ago. There's a lot of comfort around us a lot of the time, but we don't want to confuse being comfortable in that way with stagnation and with, you know, with I guess a kind of sense of self or sense of environment that's just never adapting, never changing at all, right?
Yeah.
And so that's actually very relevant what you have said, and I've actually taken that on and thought, oh, interesting, I think I've maybe confused that too at times in my life. So
and we all do it. Like, you know, I'm not sitting here saying that, oh, I've never done that, like, you know.
No.
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. And so it's being able to recognize it's just a part of life.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, like, when you were saying about the nervous system there's a guy called, I got his name wrong in a previous episode as well. I think his name is, I want to say Lex Friedman, might be wrong. Anyway, his Instagram handle is Die Without Regrets. Cool. And his content is really, really amazing. And he'll often do posts about, like, you know, again, much like in the Između spirit of, like, the sweet spot, the in-between, like, it is entirely possible to, for example, do, like, a demanding or stressful job or have, like, a demanding or stressful situation and you not feel like you're just chronically, like, high on adrenaline and cortisol and running on like, there is a possibility to do both. And I think the more I've kind of sat with that, it's like, you know, I really still want to have a very fruitful career and do something and challenge myself in my work. But I think I always just compared that to, like, well, I don't want that because I don't want to be stressed my entire life. And it's like, actually, they don't go hand in hand. And there is a world in which I could work on my nervous system enough and tone it enough to do something like that in the future and not feel awful the entire time. Yeah. Which has been really, like, quite a lovely realization. Yeah. They're not mutually exclusive. No. There are absolutely people out there, and I knew this anyway when I was working in law, that were amazing, incredible lawyers that were busy all the time and 24/7, and they did not feel like that. They loved it. Yeah. They felt calm. They felt in control. Yeah. I just always, I guess, assumed, like, because I felt like that a lot of the time, that they were the same, and they're not. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't believe they're not. So, yeah, I love that. You need to go.
Oh, yes, it's 11:30.
So, but this was fun. This was just supposed to be a very, as you can see, spontaneous. if this video works, everyone, I don't know if it's going to. But hopefully the audio will anyway. And this was just supposed to be. And in many ways, I'll just touch on this as, like, I have to constantly work through my perfectionism as well. And this project of the podcast has really eliminated that. There is still a lot of that there. And as we always say, like, that's okay. Like, those feelings are going to come up. And I also accept that about myself now. I don't get annoyed at myself anymore for being somebody that is a perfectionist with many things. And I think, doing this podcast is really helpful for me because I've had to loosen up so many kind of expectations about what this would look like and how it would be, and again, like, sort of, I guess, fuck around and find out with it as well, which I'm actually, like, even this morning we were trying to figure out how to work this,
and we got there.
Fairly simple technology, probably Jack would say, but we got there, and it was actually kind of fun. I was, like, quite enjoying just problem solving this morning and being like, oh well,
look, we've got video and audio, so there we go.
So there we go. Kelly, thank you so much.
Of course, anytime.
For your time and your wisdom, as always. We did chat about how it would be really cool if we, like, kept up with Kelly to do little, like, check-in episodes about her move to Sydney, because I just thought your first episode with us was amazing. I really did. You were great, and so many people said the same, and I think you have a lot to say.
Amazing.
And a lot to give. So thank you.
Thank you, girl. Follow us into the unknown.
Yeah, I know.